the story of this company actually began some 25 or 30 years ago at a very unlikely place called Western Energy Institute, which was a department of the Department of Energy at that time, with two young, good-looking guys, Dr. Russell Rank, and Bill Gilbert. And the reason that all of us are here is because of the work that they did many, many years ago. We had the good fortune, through the introduction of Ken, to meet Bill and to understand the work that he and Russ had done 25 or 30 years ago to create a technology that was commonly called electrocoagulation. And it was a technology that many people in the water business recognized as potentially a breakthrough technology. The limitations of it, however, was cost of operation and the ability to scale to very large size. When we brought Bill back into the family, Gilmore said, I got to find Russ Rank. Who's Russ Rank? He's living in Alaska, and he's working with the Umiak tribe in oil spill cleanups. And he was my colleague, and he was my partner, and together we've accomplished things. And we found Russell, and we convinced him to move back down to this part of the United States. And Russell and Bill came together, and in a very short time, maybe 6 or 8 months, they actually solved those problems so that we can scale this technology to very, very large size. That's, thousands of gallons a minute. And we've gotten the operating costs to a point where they really are de minimis. That means, therefore, that we have the ability to potentially become a disruptive technology to deal with issues that are major, major issues affecting humanity. And you're going to hear a lot more of that from John Paul, who I've imposed upon to spend a few minutes and give us a perspective based upon conversations that and speeches that he's done at the UN within the last 2 weeks on these very same issues. And so 4 years ago, what we decided to do was to take that technology, to find a way to commercialize it and make it important, not only financially to a company or a public company, but rather to the world. Because Lord knows the world needs clean water. And if you just take a moment after the meeting and look at some of these pictures around the room, you will find that that's what passes for clean water in many, many parts of the world. And so it was a requirement to put together a number of elements to make this a commercial product that could be deployed in large volume and quickly. The first of these was to bring in a seriously significant, experienced management team. And the reason that we asked all of our folks to sort of be on the front row here is it is not only a pleasure to work with all of these people, but the experience that they have, each in their respective fields, each in their respective industries, whether it's maritime, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's mining or whatever, brings the actual capabilities to do what we intend to do to fruition. So we assembled a very senior management team. We assembled a very senior and experienced board of directors that you've seen here. We spent a great amount of time and effort in launching a marketing and business development program that is now about 1.5 years in time that it started. We have been through the process of meeting with large numbers of the major players in the oil and gas business as a first focus, in mining and industrial as a second focus, and the various interests in maritime as a third focus, not all necessarily in priority, just that's how it lists out. And to that end, we have been able to go through the process of bringing a smaller size unit into the field, demonstrating the technology, having the results of that demonstration validated by independent laboratory analysis, both the customers and ours, and the customer winding up basically saying, my goodness gracious, you've done exactly what you say you do. So we've created a deep pipeline of projects, potential opportunities to deploy significant numbers of units. And that's about a year and a half under our belt now. And so we believe that we are exactly where this company needs to be in order to implement a recurring revenue model that Matt is going to talk a lot more about. During that same period of time, we also pursued the intellectual property. And what that means is to take the various patent pendings and provisional patents and so on, and to continue to enhance them, to continue to build around them, building fences of protection and layers of protection and so on. What is significant about that is I had the opportunity to present this company to a very sophisticated gentleman some time ago. And he looked at me and he said, "Do you realize that you may have just created Apple Computer?" And I said, "I was actually not thinking about it in that context. What do you mean?" He said, "What I mean is that you have a technology that is potentially disruptive. You have a technology that can satisfy the requests of the regulatory agencies who want clean water and the individual companies themselves, the oil and gas companies, the mining companies, who are food processing companies, who are known to be generally polluters, who don't want to any longer be polluters. And that's why every time you turn on your television, you see an ad from ExxonMobil that says, we're not going to contaminate your groundwater, we drill real deep in the world, in the earth, and everything is going to be fine. And that's why you see articles almost every other day or every week that talks about potentially problems with fracking. We consider ourselves to be a really important friend to the industries that are creating contaminated water because we give them the ability to clean that water, to reuse that water, to recycle that water, and to make it useful again, so that we can save trillions of gallons of water for human consumption. And the world realizes that humanity may someday live without fossil fuels, but it will never ever live without water. So it really is a serious issue. And our time has come. And more importantly, Russ Rank and Bill Gilmore's time has come to the benefit of all of us, because 25 years ago, they did this miraculous thing, and my words, nobody cared. Great, you can clean water, so what? We showed oil companies in the oil sands of Canada, which you read about all the time, Russ and Bill, they tested those waters, and they could show you samples of water that they ran 25 years ago that are still clean. And today the headlines are, we got to find a way to solve these problems. So they only created a 75-mile lake of deeply contaminated water and destroyed the sanitation, potable water for the native tribes, the First Nation tribes around Fort McMurray, Fort Mackay. And it really didn't have to happen. But today is today, and we have had the privilege to be able to put the infrastructure in place and to be able to put the resources in place to accomplish the dream that Bill and Russ had many years ago. And so it gives me, not only from the financial side, but from a humanity side and from a personal basis, the ability to have an important technology become commercial and to make a difference in people's lives is just the most significant thing that I could ever aspire to. And so I feel very privileged to have that opportunity. In addition to the intellectual property, we created all of the other elements necessary. We executed a corporate finance plan that brought in excess of $22 million into this company. That gave us the ability to build the full infrastructure that is required to deploy large numbers of plants in a very rapid period of time. So I want to make a few specific statements, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ray, who will basically discuss with you the actual operational and implementation plan to effectuate that which we just talked about. In the first instance, as mentioned, we have identified 3 vertical markets for the applications of the technology. The first is oil and gas, The second is industrial, which includes mining, food processing, and the like. And the third is maritime. Clean, reusable water is the quest both for industry and the regulatory parties. We have the enabling technology to play a significant role in working with these entities to solve contaminated water issues. Our short and intermediate term goals is to apply all of the company's resources toward the deployment of our electro-precipitation units to multiple major oil and gas companies in order to establish a revenue-generating entity in the very, very near term. We are, in fact, in the middle of that, literally as we speak. We believe that we can create the gold standard for what we call electro-precipitation. Electro-precipitation is the new term that we have trademarked for the description of our technology. Because EC had great promise, EP has fulfilled that promise. And so, when we market the technology, people ask for, I want one of those EP units. So we've established it as a brand, if you will, along with a term we call integrated water systems, which describes what the product itself is. It's an integrated water system, 630, which refers to the gallonage per minute that it processes, utilizing EP inside. EP inside would be like Intel inside. So the basic technology is driven by everything that Russ and Bill have accomplished. So our business model, as mentioned, but I really want to emphasize, is a recurring revenue model that gives us the ability to create an ongoing stream of revenue for each unit deployed. It's not a one-time thing. It's a lease, and it's a processing fee per gallonage or a royalty per gallonage. So the more units that you put out, the more that those recurring revenues continue to agglomerate, and it's almost geometrical. If one unit produces X, then 10 units produce Y, and 100 units produce a big number. And so what we needed to do is to put everything in place to accomplish that. This is the statement that I really want to make just before bringing Ray up. We have a laser focus now as a company. Okay, all the things that we've talked about, that infrastructure and everything else that we've built over 4.5 years, is now in place to allow us to rapidly deploy multiple units quickly into the first focus oil and gas industry. And the reason for that is because there are major shale plays all over the United States. That means oil and gas that are found under the surface, where they're utilizing a technology called hydraulic fracturing, which gives them the ability to inject into a well large volumes of water that generally have some pretty nasty chemicals in them. And the purpose of that is to actually fracture the rock, which then allows for oil and gas to escape and come back up. The good news is it's increased the known reserves in the United States and probably the rest of the world by 40%. That's good news. The bad news is trillions of gallons of water are required in order to utilize that process. And so the conflict is, we know we need energy. We know it's a national security thing, among other things. The conflict is, we don't want to contaminate all of this water that we ultimately need for humanity. This technology represents the blending of those two objectives. We can treat the water. You're going to see pictures of tanks of contaminated water that flow through this technology, that fill up other tanks of clean water that is then recycled and reused. This is truly the personification of a sustainable solution.